I've been studying Hapkido for a few good years, and I've noticed that there are many of the same or similar techniques in Aikido that are in Hapkido, and that there are also some very similar techniques in Jujutsu that are in Hapkido. Although I would say, for example, that Aikido and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu don't seem to, at least outwardly, share very many of the same techniques. Hapkido seems to fall kind of in between, where it has some of both. And so this kind of made me curious as to the lineage of these three arts. And so I did a little research recently. I did check out some things at my local library, but I found that the internet was actually a much easier search. So what I did find is that both Hapkido and Aikido share an ancestor art that is a style of traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu called Deidoryu Akijujutsu, or Akijujutsu for short, or also sometimes Deidoryu Jujutsu. But this style of Jujutsu was founded about 1,000 years ago in feudal Japan by a samurai leader named Minamoto Yoshimitsu. Yes, Yoshimitsu, like the video game character from Soul Calibur and Tekken. So Yoshimitsu was most famous for dissecting the corpses of his slain enemies for research purposes in his martial arts techniques, so he could learn to apply joint locks, so he could find vital targets, things like that. And, this guy was hardcore. I mean, when you think of Aikido, which was a style that descended from this style, you just come to realize what a far cry the founder of this style was compared to the founder of Aikido. The founder of Aikido was a choir boy, was a tree-hugging hippie compared to this guy. Yoshimitsu was like somewhere between Mad Dog Mattis and Vlad the Impaler. He was a guy who didn't mess around. I'll say that. But I think one thing that is important to remember here about Jiu-Jitsu in feudal Japan is that it wasn't about tradition or harmony and balance, and it also wasn't about grappling on the ground and trying to get somebody in a submission technique. It was about killing your enemy on the battlefield, normally with weapons. And the majority of Japanese martial arts at that time were weapon-oriented. And I think you're going to see a lot of evidence of this in the more traditional Jiu-Jitsu demonstrations. You're going to see a lot of subtle considerations for where people might place their weapons, how people might wear their armor, certain targeting strategies and control strategies that really only make sense against an armored assailant, or really only make sense when you or your assailant could potentially have a bladed weapon like a knife or a tanto. This is just my opinion. Feel free to disagree. But I think if you watch this demonstration with an open mind, you might just come to the same conclusion. Judge for yourself. Okay, so one thing I noticed when going through this is that in the techniques demonstrated, they are always keeping positive control of their assailant's weapon arm, which in most people is the right arm. 2, they are always striking in the armpit, which makes no sense if you were practicing mixed martial arts or fighting for the street. But if your sole purpose is fighting other armored opponents, and you have a bladed weapon like a dagger or a tanto, then striking in the armpits actually makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and just get started watching this. Okay, one more thing right here. So, in Aikido, we're told that this kind of attack that they do is supposed to simulate a bladed weapon attack most of the time. This attack they do with their open hand like this. So we're going to just assume that that's what it is throughout this. When they do this open-handed strike, we're going to assume that this is supposed to simulate a bladed weapon like a ice pick style knife attack with a tanto. Okay, I don't know, maybe they just didn't have a lot of training weapons back then. I don't know. But let's go ahead and watch. So notice he keeps positive control of both arms. Now watch this. So he gets one of his arms freed. Okay, so he frees up one of his arms, and look at what he does here. He exposes the armpit of his assailant, specifically the left armpit, where you would find the heart. Okay, and now look what he's doing here with his hand. He's doing the knife simulated attack. Where is he going to strike? Right here. This is a battlefield technique. That's the only way it really makes sense to me. Same there, strike in the armpit. What's he doing? Exposing the armpit, doing that knife thing with his hand. Always keeping positive control, both arms, look at that. Stepping on the other arm, making sure he can't use it. That's definitely a simulated thrust. Look at keeping control of the right arm. Let's watch that one again. So look at, he keeps positive control of that right arm, and he strikes the guy in the armpit with like a knife strike. Same here. That strike makes no sense unless it's a knife strike. You would never hit somebody like that with your open hand in the side of the head, but you would stab them in the side of the neck with a knife. Keeping control of that arm, keeping control of that weapon arm every time. Boom. Kill shot. Dropping the knife right into the cervical spine. Battlefield technique without a doubt. Same here. Opening up that armpit strike. These are knife fighting techniques. These are close quarters, grappling, and knife fighting kill tactics. Done without a knife. Right there, that's a perfect example. Look at this. This technique really wouldn't make a lot of sense in any other way. But what does he do? Oh, every single time, stepping on his assailant's other arm, making sure he can't use it, making sure he can't deploy a weapon, exposing that armpit. Why? So that he can drop his invisible knife right in there. Boom. Kill shot. Same thing. Same thing on this one. I don't know if you guys caught that one. So he slid in an armpit shot on that one too. He entangled both this guy's arms and used his free arm to hit him in the armpit. That's got to simulate a stab. It makes almost no other, it doesn't make sense any other way. Watch, you see right there. Boom. He just keeps his arms tied up. And some people would say, oh, you could never fireman carry somebody wearing full armor, except for people do it in the military all the time. Armpit strike. This, not a very good ground submission, but once again, the whole idea is keeping control of the arm. Keeping control of the weapon arm. Same on this one. Keeping control of that right arm. Hitting right in the armpit. Doesn't even make sense to hit in the armpit. But that's where he'd be hitting. Right in that spot where the armor would have a chink. Stepping on that hand. Making sure he can't use it. Throat crush. Definitely a battlefield technique. That's weapon retention right there. Look at that. See, let's take a look at that again. Okay. So the guy comes up to him, grabs his belt. Okay, this is definitely like some weapon retention. Grabs his belt. What does he do? He wraps up his arms, and look how he feeds. First thing he does is he reaches behind his assailant's back and gains control of his assailant's weapon arm so that his assailant can't reach around and stab him. And then once he's got one, look at that. Now he's got both arms occupied. Now he uses his free hand to attack his assailant. So another thing is I notice is they always grab the hands, and I don't know why exactly this is, but I assume it might be because of the armor. I imagine it would be way harder to grab somebody's wrist if they were wearing, gauntlets or armor on their wrists. Their hands might be one of the only things you could grab. So he's gouging him in the eyes, taking him down, and let me guess, armpit shot, or neck maybe. But it keeps both hands occupied. Both hands are pinned down. Yep, right there. That was definitely only practical for a knife fighting technique. And he's going to stab him. Stab. Right in the armpit. Okay, so this last one looks more like a mechanics of arrest law enforcement type technique. He's got both arms behind the guy's back. And, you know, for a samurai, this makes sense because they were also the law enforcement officers. So he's taking POWs or something. It's interesting stuff. Anyway, I find this stuff very interesting. I think that, in all honesty, when it comes to modern Jujutsu, Hapkido, Aikido, all of them are very far from what the original intended purpose and the original intended users of the original Jujutsu actually were. That is just my opinion. Feel free to disagree, but if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.